10, 9, 8. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello Werx fans, and welcome to the first installment of the video for building model rockets. And sorry about my voice, it's kind of going away. I've got a little bit of a cold. But anyways, for this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to build a model rocket and how to do it professionally, so you can actually make it fly higher and have it stronger, so it will actually withstand some of the impacts. So if you've done model rocketry before, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. If you're not, just follow along and leave some comments below, and I will try to answer them as best we can. And for this one, what I'm going to be building is a brand new rocket from Estes Rockets, and it's called the Sasha. And this one, actually, I waited for this for a little while. It's a really sharp looking rocket. It's supposed to look like a Russian anti-aircraft missile, like an SA-2 or something like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be building this rocket mostly stock, but there'll be a few modifications, like I said, in order to make it fly better and give you better results. So with that being said, I've been doing rockets for a long time, since I was probably about 10 years old, and have flown my share of them, and I have done some scratch building of them and so on and so forth, which I'll kind of get into. I won't get super into the rocket science part of it, but a little bit of it. So stay tuned, and we will get started. And one of the other items I'm going to be using, which actually comes in pretty handy, is this Estes tube marking guide and fin marking guide and fin alignment guide. This is an all-in-one tool, and it works actually pretty handy. I didn't think it would work as well as it does, so we're going to use that as well to get started. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. Alrighty, I have a few tools out here. These are mainly the ones I'm going to be using for this build, and I will go over them real quick with you. The first thing I have here is a standard hobby knife, number 11 blade. There's a lot of different brands of these. Just make sure you have a sharp blade. Get a pack of maybe 15 or so blades, because you'll be going through them. You want to keep this sharp. The minute it goes dull, you're going to want to dispose of it and change it out. For example, if you look real closely, I've got some super glue that's stuck to it, and it's probably on the actual cutting edge, so I'm going to change that before I even get started. So just make sure that's very sharp. Next up is just a regular pencil. Make sure it's something in the number 2B or a B series pencil. That will make a darker mark. The H's are hard lead, and they don't make as dark of a mark when you're actually marking the tubes and so forth. You're going to want to be able to see it, especially after you do some of the prepping on it. Okay, next thing is a ruler. You can use just about any type of ruler. I've got a little triangular ruler here. It has metric and standard and some other measurements here, 1/60ths of an inch and so forth. But basically you want inches and a metric one. This one I like because you can set it on the tube, and it actually will set better than a wide flat ruler, but you can use a flat ruler. Okay, sandpaper. Usually want a couple different grits. This one is about a 150 grit. This is going to knock down all the balsa and some of the other areas that we're going to want to work on the fins. So you start with a 150, usually going to a 220 and then a 320, and that's usually about enough. You can polish it down to a 600, but we'll show that when I get to that point. Okay, for the glues, the main glue is going to be this is actually a carpenter's glue. You can use Elmer's glue, but this actually works a lot better. It's a lot faster, has a lot more fiber in it, so it will hold a lot stronger. It's easier to work with. I would recommend definitely any of the yellow glues like Tide Bond over a Elmer's style glue, and you'll be very happy you did. The other thing is a super glue, a medium set super glue. Again, a ton of different brands of this. You don't really want the stuff that does has plastic melting capabilities because you don't want to melt the plastic too much, but a medium super glue of some type. Accelerator. This is for a couple uses. Basically, it is to kick this super glue instantaneously. You put this on, it actually will still take a little while for it to dry, so you can actually spray it with this, instantly crystallizes it. Makes building go a lot faster, makes it so you can put super glue where you want it, freeze it where you want it, instead of it just dripping everywhere in places you don't want, like in the launch lugs. Another thing this is nice for is for field repair. If you have a fin or something break off, you can use a super glue in this, and you can just glue it right back on within a couple of seconds, and you're ready to go again. Again, most accelerators work with most brands of super glues. This is a sanding sealer. There's a couple different types. This is actually a water-based stuff, which is actually works pretty well. The difference between it and some of the others is it doesn't smell as bad. So if you're in a small area, you're going to want to use something that's water-based like this. The disadvantage is that this stuff, being water-based, will actually warp wood. So I found out that what you have to do when you use this is you have to basically spread it on one side, let it dry till it's touchable, then do the other side, and it will rebend it the other direction. Then when it's both sides are pretty much dry to the touch, you can put them on something flat and put something heavy on top of them till it completely dries, and then they'll dry, the fins will dry completely flat. Sometimes there's a little bit of curve. The solution to that is this stuff here. And this is the lacquer version of sanding sealer. There's a couple others out there that are cellulose based. This stuff is the stuff that we used to use back in the day for RC airplanes and rockets. It does not warp the fins. It dries extremely fast, builds up real good, so you don't have to use as many coats, but it is really nasty smelling. Smells like a fiberglass factory, so you want to do this outside or somewhere where it's extremely well ventilated. Unfortunately, they don't make the small bottles of this stuff anymore, which is easier to use by Aerogloss, but this is the same stuff in a big container. Again, when you open this stuff up, being such a big container, it's going to be really nasty, so outdoors only on that, but it is more of a professional grade stuff. Okay, moving along to this. This is actually automotive glazing putty. What this is going to be used for is doing some of the fillets on some of the fins, basically making everything aerodynamic, making a smooth transition from the tube to the fins. Show you how to use that when we get to that point. This stuff is smells pretty bad, not too bad, not like the sanding sealer, but you'll get used to using it. Just use gloves when you actually apply it, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. So that's basically the tools that you'll need to build this. Some toothpicks, some round toothpicks would be about the only other thing I would suggest, and some cotton swabs. So now let's get to some of the actual construction and looking at the rocket. Okay, so we're ready to actually start looking at what's in the rocket itself. So let's cut it open and see what kind of parts we have. Actually, for that, I'll give you a couple specs on this particular rocket. Skill level 3, so it's going to be a little bit of construction. This one is actually can be launched as a single stage or a double stage. That's the reason I'm doing this, is so I can cover two types of rockets on the same tutorial. It is with the most powerful engines, these actually take the D's and the E's from Estes, and those are very powerful motors. If you do those with both stages, you can go up to 2,300 feet, which will be way out of sight, so you really want to go with a club to launch this and have some other people that can put some eyes on it and have a large area to recover it. Little word about launching rockets. The best way to do this is, if you're going to go to a park, make sure you have enough space. Estes has a catalog that has all the information on what type of space you need. I will go over that at the end of the video. The other thing is that you want to be sure that you are okay to launch there. Most parks these days don't allow rockets or radio control. If you're not sure, contact the city that you're in and Parks and Recreation and see what they say. You may have to email them. You sometimes could just call them find out whether it's legal. If not, and you're having a hard time finding a place to launch, you can get in contact with schools. If they're doing rockets, sometimes you can join them. Or there's clubs. Just Google the different clubs for your area. They usually have a launch once a month, and they will actually go to some place where they can launch even high-powered rockets. So my suggestion is definitely get with a club to do it the safe way and to do it the easy way. And hopefully once this is done, at the end of the video, I will show you launching it with one of the clubs. So anyways, let's get started. This can take a for example, a D12.5 or an E12.6, and then the single stage has to have a 0 at the end. I will go over the engine information a little bit later. So what we've got, first up is the main tube, and it does have a plastic coating on it, so you're not going to want to sand too much on this, otherwise you'll sand through that and you'll get to the paper, and then when you paint it, it'll look kind of crummy. So I'll show you some tricks to that. Okay, next piece up is the second stage. Now this one has a second set of fins. Reason these have these slots in them, it's for through the wall connection. So instead of having the fins just glued to the tube, they actually go through it and glue to the tube inside. And the reason for that is this little piece tumbles to the ground, hits pretty hard. So you're going to want a fin that actually is slotted in there so it doesn't just snap off. So kind of a nice little addition Estes did there. Okay, your nose cone. This actually is the nose cone and has the tail cone, which looks like a little exhaust piece here, which you will have to cut apart. Okay, so we got next up is the engine mount, and this is the engine mount for the second. One will be for the first stage, one will be for the second stage, so you have two of those. What this is this is actually just to fit all the lugs inside of here and stops that will keep the engine from going all the way through the rocket. So this is a dummy engine. This is the size of the engine you're going to be using, and again they give this to you to size it. They make it yellow so you know this is not actually part of the rocket. Okay. Next up we have a little baggie of goodies here. And some of these are going to be replaced. Okay, this is the shock cord. What this does is it attaches the nose cone to the rocket, keeps it from separating when you actually have the parachute come out. This stuff is not too bad to use, but I personally don't like it. One of the reasons I don't like it is because when the nose cone gets blown off, it actually stretches this because it goes off pretty hard. And what will happen is if the harder this stretches, you need less heat and it will break. So if it's not stretched very much, the heat doesn't hurt it too bad. But if it stretches, just takes a little heat and pop, it's gone. So we're going to replace that with a nylon shock cord for that. Again, not a bad item, but could be better. So we're going to do that. They give you a 18-inch parachute. This is a plastic parachute. It's pre-wired, so to speak, pre-strung, which is kind of nice. The only problem with plastic parachutes are the fact that when the heat gets to these, if you don't have enough wadding, which keeps the heat and flames from this, if they get to it, it will melt, and it'll melt together, and it will not deploy properly, and it'll open up. It won't open up. So if you like a lightweight parachute, go ahead and use something like this, but I like to replace them with a nylon parachute. Nylon parachutes are a little heavier, but they will deploy all the time. They do not melt together, and they usually don't give you as many issues. So we'll be replacing that. Okay, next up is one of the engine engine retaining hooks. And what this does is this is a little snap hook that when you put the engine in, it keeps it from pushing itself out. This is the old way they've been doing it for many, many years. This rocket uses two systems. They use actually a newer system now too. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, next up is clay. Now this I'm going to have to go into a little bit of rocket science in a bit here about why you have to put clay in the nose of this rocket and whether this is actually used for. Okay. Next up from that we have the launch lugs. These are the actual guides that will go along the side of the rocket, where the rocket launch rod will go through when you actually put the rocket on the launch pad, and it'll have basically a metal rod that's going to slide in and out of these here like so. It is critical to get these straight because you're going to have two of them, so you want to basically get them straight. I'll show you how to do that as well. And you want to make sure that they're attached really well. Okay, we have some engine blocks or engine block rings. What these do is these go in the engine tube itself and they glue in, and that actually keeps the engine from thrusting itself forward and going through your whole rocket. Okay, a few more parts here and we'll be done with the introduction here. Okay. There goes that blade. So I'll open it by hand. Alrighty. So this little bag, what it has is it actually has the coupler. And what the coupler does is it will attach your lower stage to your upper stage. Again, more test rings here. These are actually a spacer if you want to start using D-size engines instead of the E's. E's are this length, D's are a little shorter, so you'd actually put this in there and then the D engine in there. That way the D engine doesn't move around. So definitely do not discard those. This is the new system for holding the engine in, besides that metal piece. What this is, it's a little screw ring. This will actually go on the back of the rocket, and then you put the engine in here, and then you screw this in over that, and that retains the engine in the rocket itself. So we'll show you how to use that too. Okay. So now next up is going to be the actual fins themselves. Now this particular rocket, since it is a D and E powered rocket, the fins are quite a bit thicker than a normal C-size rocket. Okay, they are laser cut, which for you people just getting into rocketry, you're very lucky because we used to have to actually cut these out. So, and that was a real pain in the neck, trying to get the grain in the correct direction. Basically, whenever you have a rocket fin, the grain must be crosswise to the wind, because if you have the actual grain going the same way the wind will just rip it completely apart. And it's amazing how easily it can do that. So you actually want to have the grain going crossways. So if you start scratch building stuff, just keep that in mind. Okay, we've got three actually pieces of that balsa wood. And there's the other fins there. Okay. Also in that same bag we have the decals, which are water slide decals, which are kind of nice. Some companies give you stickers. Both will work. Water slide decals hold on better if you don't put a clear coat on them. Okay, the instruction booklet, which we'll go through here in a moment. Okay. These are the engine rings, and what these do is they keep this engine tube here centered inside the bigger tube. And these you want to get pretty straight. Again, it's nice, they're laser cut, so they're going to be easy to use. It's got a little piece of balsa because it has some little end pieces on the fins just to make it look more like a scale rocket. Okay, so that is it for all the parts, and we'll get started on the next step, and I'll start introducing you to some of the reasons why we have these parts in the kit. Okay folks, time for some actual rocket science. And this is why rocketry can be so much fun, especially for youngsters learning some of the science, and some of the oldsters learning some science. This video is intended for the older audience. If you want to build this with a youngster, be sure to watch this video completely, get familiar with everything, maybe watch it a couple times, and then start in with a youngster and make sure you give them adult supervision, because some of this you do need to use sharp objects like the knives and so forth. Anyways, so why do we have clay in this kit, and why is it gooey? There is a couple reasons why rockets fly straight and why they don't fly straight. I would suggest that you go on YouTube and look at some of the rocket science of what they call center of pressure. So what a rocket has is it has a center of gravity and it has a center of pressure. So basically, when you have your complete rocket completely built, it's just like when you first try to find the center of gravity. Now, basically, a center of gravity is the same way you do it on an airplane or anything like that. It's basically the center of balance, or the CG, center of gravity. So what that is once everything is completely built, engine installed and everything, you actually can take the rocket and you can actually balance it on one point. So whether it's your finger or anything, or the back of a chair, but basically you're going to want to find out where it actually will balance. Like right there, it's balancing pretty well on this pencil. If I move it one way or the other, it tips down. So right there is pretty close to the center of balance. So what I would like to do, if you're just curious, you can always put a mark on there for CG, the word or letter CG for center of gravity. So that is how you find out the balance of the rocket. But that does not tell you how well it's going to fly. Just because you got everything balanced, it doesn't tell you anything. So basically, I'll give you a quick tutorial on it. Center of pressure is actually once the air actually goes completely over the rocket itself, and all the basically the distance of all the surfaces on your rocket, because your air is going to be going around everything. So basically, as it goes over the rocket one direction, it's actually going to have pressure on the rocket itself, because the rocket is going to want to move up and down and move kind of crazy. So what the center of pressure does is it actually will keep everything balanced within the airstream, or within the airflow. Now, the problem is that to make a rocket fly correctly, you want to have the center of gravity and the center of pressure in two different places. So you're going to basically want to change your rocket to have the two of them further apart. And the way to do that is some rockets that are short, they will actually need, that have, say, like a large fin unit. The large fin unit's going to want to move around when it's in the airstream. So what you want to do is you will need to put something in the front to keep that from moving around, a little stability when it's in the airflow. So what you're going to do is you're going to go as far as you can with this clay, and you're going to jam it up here inside this nose cone all the way up to the end. The reason you want to do that is that's going to change your center of gravity. So when you change your center of gravity, again, you put it as far as you can forward. That way you have to use the least amount as possible, because you're trying to keep your rocket light. So by doing that, you're going to move your center of gravity forward and away from the center of pressure. And the further they're away from each other is generally a better way to get a rocket that will fly correctly. Like I said, go on some of the YouTube videos and they'll talk about testing it, putting a string on it, swinging it around, and doing that kind of thing. But that's why we put clay in the nose of these rockets, is to keep everything in balance under air pressure. Again, the shorter the rocket, you get short rockets that are like short fat rockets. you really want to have a lot of nose weight on them, so that nose is going to try to keep itself pointed in the wind itself and keep your rocket from going crazy and oscillating. So that's a general rule. There's a lot of the rockets that are long don't need any kind of weight in the nose because they have so much weight going up to the front from the fin unit that they don't need it. So anyways, that's kind of a short dissertation of center of pressure. There's lots of ways to figure it out. Estes has already figured it out. That's why they give you this. So once you do what they tell you to do with this, everything should be copacetic. So there's a little bit of rocket science to rockets. And we will get set to the next step. Okay, first step on the instructions, what we're going to do is, of course, read everything, read all the special, important safety features. It does give you a list of different things that you're going to need. Some of the things I didn't talk about are scissors, tape, and paint to paint the model when you're done. But anyways, those are all on the list here. The list below it is all the parts that we went through. Make sure everything is there. If there's anything missing, you'll need to return the rocket to where you got it from or get that part before you start, because otherwise you'll be very frustrated if you're in the middle of building and you don't have the right part. So go through the parts list and it'll tell you exactly everything that's there. If for some reason you lose or break a piece, the instructions actually show the stock number of those parts. So if you call, for example, Estes, and you need that part, they can actually get that part for you with that part number. Okay. Looking through the instructions, this first page, what this has on it is this is actually a full-size cutout, which is really handy. Instead of having to measure everything, they give you an exact measurement of this little piece here. And this wraps, you cut this out, wrap it around the tube, you mark where all the fin lines are supposed to be. This part here is actually a shock cord mount. We talked about the shock cord a little bit. This actually, you glue it to it and you fold it over and you put it in the rocket itself. Again, full size, you cut it out of the instructions. They're showing about cutting some of the nose cone apart here. Then, so be very careful with cutting it with the knife because it can slip on this. You can use a razor saw if you'd like, maybe a little bit safer. Here they're talking about the clay, where you actually take the two squares of clay and you're going to roll them into a snake and you're going to put them into the end of the rocket, and then you're going to tamp them down to the end of the rocket to give it some more weight, since this rocket is a little bit short for the size of the fin unit. Okay, there's the engine mount system and the measurements. Okay, putting the first stage together, talking about the fins and how to take care of those. The rings that hold in the actual engine mounts. And here's where you actually put on that paper to make the markings for the fins. This part here goes to attaching the fins, putting the lugs on, putting these little streaks of wood here that make it look more like a scale rocket. And on the back, talks about actually once you're ready to go, you put your parachute on, put the wadding in, load the engine, and then has the launch directions here. Now, the National Rocketry Association has a code, the NAR safety code, and you really need to go over that and understand exactly what the code is and why it's there. It's all a safety thing of how to launch, where to launch, what to do if there's a misfire, things like that. So make sure you know what the NAR, National Association of Rocketry Safety Code is. You can also go to their website and they will talk about getting involved with their club, or their society, I should say, and get you in contact with some of the clubs and so forth. So we'll get to some of the actual launching stuff when we're actually ready to do that. So we're finally ready to actually start doing some work on the rocket. So we will get ready with the first step, and we'll go from there.